Ready for a deep dive. This time we're tackling a big one, the Last Supper. We're talking about the meal itself, the drama that went down, and of course, all those layers of meaning that have kept people debating for centuries. And to guide us, we've got the Urantia Book, which always brings a unique perspective.
Yeah, most people think they've got this story down pat.
Yeah.
But the Urantia Book, it adds these details, these little insights that really make you rethink the whole thing.
And those aha moments, that's what we live for on this show. So we're in an upper room, right? Passover meal, 13 people. Sounds pretty straightforward so far. But then the Urantia Book hits us with these really specific details about how everything is set up, and it totally changes the whole vibe.
It's true. It's like the stage is being set for this incredibly significant event.
Yeah.
No servants rushing around. The couches are arranged just so. All these little clues that point to these bigger themes of humility and service.
Okay, so I'm picturing myself walking into this room, no bustling servants, just this really intimate gathering, and 13 couches. Not chairs. That seems significant.
It is. You see, back then, reclining on couches, that implied a sense of closeness, of equality. Jesus, he wanted to eliminate any sense of hierarchy during this meal, even though it was Passover, which was usually a pretty formal affair.
Interesting. So he's already shaking things up right from the start, but this wasn't just any Passover, was it? What made this gathering different?
Well, Passover commemorated the liberation from slavery in Egypt, right? But with this meal, Jesus was preparing his disciples for a different kind of freedom. Freedom from material concerns, freedom from spiritual darkness. He knew what was coming, his death, and of course the resurrection. According to the Urantia Book, this meal was about giving his disciples the tools to grasp the true meaning of it all. This wasn't just a history lesson. This was about their future, their understanding, their spiritual survival.
Wow, okay. Talk about high stakes. So they're about to experience this profound shift in understanding. And what does the Urantia Book focus on? Their very human reactions. And let me tell you, it's both hilarious and kind of reassuring. Because who among us wouldn't be a little preoccupied with the seating arrangements at such a momentous occasion? Exactly. It's that perfect blend of the profound and the mundane that makes the Urantia Book's account so relatable. Even when faced with the divine, we humans, we can't help but get caught up in our own little dramas.
And it's in those moments, those seemingly insignificant exchanges, that we often reveal our truest selves, right?
Absolutely. And the beauty of the Urantia Book is that it doesn't shy away from those moments. It embraces them, explores them, because ultimately it's in those imperfections that we discover something truly profound about what it means to be human.
I love that. So let's dive into those human moments, shall we? Because the Urantia Book doesn't hold back when it comes to describing the disciples' reactions to this very unusual Passover meal. And trust me, it gets interesting.
Oh, it does. Fasten your seatbelts, because we're about to unpack a whole lot more than just bread and wine. We're talking about ego, jealousy, doubt, all those messy human emotions that even the presence of the divine can't quite erase.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, then. So picture this. 13 couches arranged in a circle. No servants, just Jesus and his closest companions. And the air is thick with anticipation. But also a little bit of tension.
Oh, I bet. Okay, so spill the tea. What went down?
Well, Jesus, he starts talking about this new kind of freedom, this spiritual liberation.
Yeah.
And the disciples, well, they're trying to wrap their heads around it all. But at the same time, they're also kind of preoccupied with who's sitting where.
Of course they are. It's like human nature 101.
Exactly. And it's in those moments, those seemingly insignificant exchanges, that we see their true colors come out. We see their egos, their insecurities, their doubts, all laid bare.
All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more. Who's vying for the best seat? Who's feeling left out? Give me the inside scoop.
Well, it all starts with Judas, actually. According to the Urantia Book, he's the first one to grab the seat of honor, the one closest to Jesus.
Interesting. So even back then, it was all about who got to sit closest to the leader.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
But Judas, he's already got this cloud of betrayal hanging over him.
He does. And the Urantia Book offers this fascinating take on his motivations. It suggests that Judas wasn't driven solely by greed, as some might believe, but by a kind of intellectual pride.
Intellectual pride. Tell me more about that.
Well, it seems that Judas, he thought he had Jesus all figured out. He thought he understood how the Messiah should act, how he should lead. And when Jesus didn't conform to those expectations, Judas started to have his doubts.
So he's doubting Jesus's methods, doubting his message.
Exactly. And those doubts, they festered, grew into resentment.
And meanwhile, the other disciples, they're oblivious to all of this.
It seems so. They're caught up in their own little world of anxieties and aspirations.
It's amazing how even when you're in the presence of something so extraordinary, so transformative, those very human concerns can still loom so large.
It's a good reminder that we're all works in progress, right? Even those closest to the divine.
Absolutely. So we've got Judas wrestling with his doubts. What about the other disciples? How do they react to this whole Last Supper situation?
Well, as you can imagine, there's a whole lot of ego and insecurity at play. Take John, for example. He's always been portrayed as Jesus' closest confidant. According to the Urantia book, he's not exactly thrilled when he sees Judas snag that prime seat next to Jesus.
Oh, a little jealousy there.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just wanting to be close to Jesus. John, he's also vying for a position of influence, of authority.
Of course. It's like that old saying, there's no I in team, but there are two in Messiah's inner circle.
Exactly.
So we've got Judas struggling with his doubts, John vying for position. This is already more drama than an episode of Real Housewives of Jerusalem.
Oh, we're just getting started. Because remember Peter.
Oh, good old impetuous Peter.
The one and only. He gets so caught up in this whole seating arrangement debacle that he ends up plopping himself down in the very worst spot, the one farthest from Jesus.
Oh, no. Talk about a power move gone wrong.
Right. But here's the thing. The Urantia book suggests that even Peter's actions were driven by ego, albeit in a roundabout way.
How so?
Well, it seems that Peter, he wanted to be seen as humble, as selfless. By choosing the least desirable spot, he was, in a way, trying to outdo everyone else in their displays of piety.
Oh, I see. It's like he's thinking, oh, you think you're holy. Watch this.
Precisely. It's a classic case of spiritual one-upmanship.
And it's so human, isn't it? That desire to be seen as the most devoted, the most deserving, even when it comes at the expense of actually embodying those qualities.
Exactly. And it's a trap that we can all fall into, even today, whether it's in our religious practices, our charitable giving, or even our social media personas. It's easy to get caught up in appearances and trying to project a certain image. But true humility, true service, it comes from a place of genuine selflessness. It's not about seeking recognition or praise. It's about showing up with an open heart and offering ourselves fully without any expectation of reward.
I love that. And it's a powerful reminder that true spiritual growth often happens not in those grand gestures, but in those quiet, unassuming moments of genuine connection and service.
Exactly. And the Urantia book, it doesn't shy away from those messy human moments. It embraces them, explores them, because it understands that those imperfections are an essential part of our spiritual journey.
And it's in those moments, those seemingly insignificant exchanges, that we often catch glimpses of something truly profound.
Absolutely.
So there we are, Judas grappling with his doubts, John seeking status, Peter attempting a humility power play, and Jesus, he's witnessing it all, taking it all in.
He is. And instead of reprimanding them for their very human foibles, he chooses to meet them with compassion. He chooses to teach through example.
And that's where the foot washing comes in, right? One of the most iconic and symbolic acts in all of religious history.
Exactly. But as we'll see, the Urantia book's interpretation of this event adds a whole new layer of meaning to an already profound act of service.
Okay, now you've really got me on the edge of my seat. Tell me everything. Okay, now you've really got me on the edge of my seat. Tell me everything.
All right, so we're in this upper room, right? Tension's kind of thick. And Jesus, he does something completely unexpected. He wraps a towel around himself, picks a basin of water, and starts washing the disciples' feet.
Whoa. Talk about a power move.
Right. But this is about way more than just power dynamics. The Urantia book suggests that by washing their feet, Jesus was actually taking on the low energies of humanity, all those base desires, those ego-driven impulses that were on full display just moments before.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's like he's saying, look, I see your flaws, your insecurities, but I'm not afraid of them. I'm here to cleanse them, to lift you up.
Wow, that's powerful. And totally in line with that theme of liberation we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And remember, in that time and place, foot washing was the job of the lowliest servant. For a teacher, a leader to do it, unthinkable. But Jesus, he's flipping the script on leadership, right? Showing them that true power isn't about dominance or control. It's about service, compassion, even for our messiest, most human impulses.
And of course, Peter being Peter, he just can't let this moment pass without a little drama.
Oh, absolutely not. At first, he's resistant, doesn't want Jesus to wash his feet, thinks it's beneath him.
Typical Peter.
Right. But Jesus, he's patient. He explains to Peter that this act, this washing, it's about more than just physical cleanliness. It's about spiritual renewal. It's about preparing for a new way of being.
And how does Peter react to that?
Well, once he understands the deeper significance, he goes from one extreme to the other. Suddenly, he's all in. wants Jesus to wash not just his feet, but his hands and head too.
Oh, Peter. Always such a character.
Right. But, in a way, Peter's reaction, it kind of sums up the whole human experience, doesn't it? We resist, we doubt. But then, when we catch a glimpse of something truly transformative, we want to dive in head first.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this story, right? It's so relatable. Even though it took place thousands of years ago, we still see ourselves in these characters, their flaws, their doubts, their moments of grace.
Exactly. And the Urantia book, it captures those nuances beautifully. It doesn't shy away from the messiness of human nature. It embraces it. Because ultimately, it's in those imperfections that we discover our shared humanity and our capacity for growth, for transformation.
So we've got this profound act of service, this radical display of humility. And then, just as the disciples are starting to grasp the significance of it all, Jesus drops the bombshell. He announces that one of them will betray him.
Talk about a mood killer, right?
Can you imagine being there in that moment? The air just went out of the room.
Right. You go from this incredible act of love and service
Yeah.
to this heavy weight of betrayal. It's a lot to process.
It really is. And what I find so interesting is how the Urantia book portrays Jesus in this moment. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't lash out. It's like he's almost accepting of what's about to happen.
It's true. And there's this real sense of compassion there, even for Judas,
Yeah.
even knowing what he's about to do.
Right. He doesn't shame Judas. He doesn't even try to stop him. It's more like he's giving Judas the space to make his own choice.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful message, isn't it? That even in the face of betrayal, we always have the power to choose love, to choose forgiveness.
Absolutely. And then, in the midst of all of this, Jesus institutes the Remembrance Supper, the bread and the wine.
Right. And, this is another area where the Urantia book's perspective is so insightful because it goes beyond the traditional interpretation of communion. It's not just about remembering Jesus' death and sacrifice. It's about tapping into a deeper spiritual reality.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the bread and the wine, they represent spiritual nourishment. They symbolize new beginnings. And the Urantia book suggests that when we participate in this remembrance with a truly open heart, we're not just remembering Jesus. We're actually connecting with his living spirit.
Wow. That gives me chills.
That's a powerful idea, isn't it?
It really is. It's like what we were talking about earlier with the foot washing. It's not just a symbolic act. It's about this real, tangible exchange of energy.
Exactly. And the Urantia book takes it even further. It says that for those who are truly devout, the master is really present during these remembrances.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
It is. But it speaks to the power of these rituals, the power of belief, to connect us with something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive, The Last Supper. It's a story that's been told and retold for centuries. But the Urantia book's perspective, it adds this whole other layer of meaning. It challenges us to think about these events and their relevance to our own lives in a whole new way.
I completely agree. It's a story about love and frail, about service and sacrifice. And ultimately, it's a story about the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest challenges.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. If you were sitting at that table with Jesus, knowing what was to come, what would you ask? What would you say? It's a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Last Supper. Until next time.